Ambassador Elias Frost gazed through the viewport as the diplomatic vessel approached Veridia, home world of the beings humans had called the Luminous for their bioluminescent skin. The swirling azure planet with its 3 moons grew larger, its atmosphere shimmering with auroras that scientists still couldn't explain. "Final approach, Ambassador," Captain Novak announced from the cockpit. "The Veridian High Council is expecting us in their capital. Remember protocol, no direct eye contact with the Queen unless she initiates it." Elias straightened his formal attire, a midnight blue suit designed specifically for this mission. "I've studied the briefings for months, Captain. Let's hope it's enough." After humanity's disastrous first contact with the luminous mining outpost in the Kuiper Belt, Earth desperately needed this treaty. The Veridians possessed technology centuries beyond human capability and weapons that could reduce Earth to cinders if they chose. The landing was smooth, and when the airlock opened, Elias was struck by the sweet, electric scent of Veridia's atmosphere. Though breathable for humans, it carried subtle notes of ozone and something like cinnamon. The welcoming party consisted of 7 tall, slender Veridians, their skin pulsing with subtle blue-green bioluminescent patterns. "Ambassador Frost," the tallest spoke in perfect English. "I am Karan, First Minister to Queen Thalia. Welcome to Helios City." Elias bowed respectfully. "The people of Earth are honored by your welcome, First Minister." The Veridian capital stretched before them, a metropolis of crystalline spires and floating platforms connected by bridges of light. The architecture defied Earth's understanding of physics, structures seemingly suspended in midair without visible support. The diplomatic convoy traveled through wide boulevards lined with curious Veridian citizens, their height averaging nearly 7 feet, all watching the human visitors with undisguised fascination. Elias maintained his composure despite feeling like a specimen under examination. The Palace of Light lived up to its name, a massive structure that appeared to be carved from a single enormous crystal, refracting the planet's twin suns into countless rainbow patterns across its surface. "Her Majesty awaits in the Grand Hall," Karan explained as they entered. "She has expressed particular interest in meeting you, Ambassador." This was unexpected. The briefings had suggested Queen Thalia rarely involved herself with diplomatic formalities until the final signing of treaties. The Grand Hall stretched impossibly high, its ceiling a dome of what appeared to be liquid starlight. Veridian nobles lined the crystalline pathway, their skin patterns shifting in what Elias recognized as expressions of curiosity and caution. At the far end, upon a raised dais of luminescent material, sat Queen Thalia. The briefings hadn't prepared him. Unlike her subject's blue-green luminescence, her skin shimmered with patterns of gold and violet. She stood as Elias approached, revealing her impressive height, at least 8 feet tall, with a regal bearing that commanded the room. Her features were alien yet striking, large, almond-shaped eyes the color of amethyst, a serene face with high cheekbones, and a crown of crystalline structures that appeared to grow naturally from her head. "Ambassador Elias Frost," her voice resonated with a melodic quality that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his mind. "Your journey was long. You are weary." It wasn't a question. Elias realized she had somehow sensed his exhaustion despite his careful mask of diplomatic professionalism. "Your Majesty," he bowed deeply, "I am honored by your welcome." When he straightened, he found her eyes fixed directly on his, a breach of the protocol he'd been warned about. Yet he couldn't look away. Something in her gaze seemed to peel away layers of pretense, examining not the diplomat but the man beneath. "You are different from the others your world has sent," she observed, her head tilting slightly. The luminous patterns on her neck pulsed with a rhythm that wasn't mirrored by any other Veridian present. "I hope that difference serves our mutual goals, Your Majesty," Elias replied carefully. A subtle curve appeared on her lips, an expression remarkably similar to a human smile. "As do I, Ambassador, as do I." The formal introductions continued, but throughout the ceremony, Elias felt the Queen's attention repeatedly returning to him even when others spoke. While ministers discussed preliminary terms, resource allocations, and boundary definitions, Queen Thalia watched him with an intensity that both unnerved and intrigued him. As the reception concluded, and Elias was being escorted to his quarters, a royal attendant approached with a message. "Ambassador Frost," the attendant bowed. Her Majesty requests your presence for a private audience tomorrow before the formal negotiations begin. Is this customary? Elias asked, surprised. No, the attendant replied simply. It is unprecedented. In his luxurious quarters that night, Elias stood by the window overlooking the glittering city of Helios, wondering what he had done to attract the Queen's particular attention, and what it might mean for the fragile peace he had come to establish. The next morning, Elias prepared meticulously for his private audience with Queen Thalia. He chose his attire carefully, formal but not rigid, a deep charcoal suit with subtle iridescent threading that mimicked Veridian fashion without seeming presumptuous. A royal escort arrived precisely on time, leading him through corridors of the palace he suspected few humans had ever seen. They passed gardens where plants responded to movement, blooming in shifting colors as they walked by, and chambers where what appeared to be liquid light flowed through transparent conduits. Her Majesty awaits in the Celestial Observatory, the escort announced, gesturing to an arched doorway that shimmered like mother of pearl. Elias stepped through to find himself in a domed chamber unlike anything on Earth. Stars and nebulae swirled overhead, not projections, but somehow actual fragments of space brought into this room through Veridian technology. Queen Thalia stood alone at the center, her tall figure silhouetted against a backdrop of cosmic wonder. Today, her luminescent patterns glowed more subtly, shifting between lavender and silver. Ambassador, she turned, her voice carrying that same resonance that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his mind. You slept poorly. Our atmosphere's different resonance often disturbs human rest cycles. Elias was startled. He had indeed tossed and turned all night, but had told no one. Your Majesty is remarkably perceptive. My species evolved as empathic hunters, she explained, moving closer. We sense the physiological states of others, heart rate, adrenaline, cortisol levels. Your kind finds it unsettling. It explains your remarkable diplomatic successes, Elias observed. You always know what your counterparts truly feel. A sound like crystal chimes filled the air, her laughter. Which is why I requested this meeting. Your colleagues mask their feelings with practiced skill, but you, she tilted her head, studying him, you acknowledge your emotions even as you control them. Fascinating. She gestured and the stars above shifted, forming a representation of Earth's solar system. Tell me, Ambassador Frost, what do humans truly want from Veridia, not the official position, your assessment? Elias considered carefully. Honesty seemed the only logical approach with an empathic being. Protection, technology, knowledge. Earth has fought 3 wars in the past century. We've barely survived our own development. Thalia nodded, the crystalline structures of her crown catching starlight. And what does Elias Frost want? The directness of her question caught him off guard. I want to succeed in creating lasting peace between our worlds. A diplomatic answer, she smiled, the patterns on her neck pulsing faster. But not your complete truth. She approached him then, moving with fluid grace. Standing before him, she was more than a foot taller, forcing him to look up to meet her gaze. To his surprise, she extended her hand, a very human gesture that their briefings said Veridians avoided. Would you permit me to show you something few outsiders have seen? Hesitantly, Elias placed his hand in hers. Her skin was smooth and slightly cooler than human temperature, and where they touched, her luminescence brightened. Interesting, she murmured. Your physiological response is complex. Before he could respond, the room around them shifted. The walls seemed to dissolve, and suddenly they stood in what appeared to be a vast underground cavern filled with bioluminescent life forms that responded to their presence, creating waves of light that rippled outward. The heart of Veridia, Thalia explained. The source of our empathic abilities. All Veridians are connected to this place. Elias gazed in wonder at the living light show surrounding them. It's beautiful. Yes, she agreed, but when he turned, he found her watching him rather than the spectacle. Humans are fascinating, so internally divided yet capable of such deep connection. She hadn't released his hand, and Elias became acutely aware of the extended contact. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that transcended their biological differences. The ministers believe humans are dangerous, she continued softly. They counsel distance, controlled technology transfer, limited interaction. And what do you believe, Your Majesty? Her free hand rose, hesitating just inches from his face. "May I?" When he nodded, she gently touched his temple. A warm sensation spread through his mind, not invasive, but like a door opening between them. "I believe there is much our species could share," she whispered, "more than resources or technology." The moment stretched between them, intimate and charged with possibility. Then, as if remembering herself, Thalia withdrew her hand, the connection breaking. "You should return to your delegation, Ambassador. Formal negotiations begin in 1 hour." As he was escorted back, Elias struggled to process what had happened. Whatever had passed between them went far beyond diplomacy. He sensed that Queen Thalia had shown him something deeply personal, and that she had glimpsed something in him that he himself hadn't fully acknowledged. Throughout the following days of negotiations, Elias performed his diplomatic duties flawlessly, but each evening brought another private invitation from the Queen. She showed him ancient Veridian libraries where knowledge was stored in crystalline structures, gardens where plants communicated through light and sound, and observatories that could view distant galaxies with perfect clarity. Each meeting deepened their connection. She began sharing Veridian poetry, translating concepts that had no human equivalent. He told her of Earth's oceans, deserts, and forests, environments Veridia lacked. During their sixth private meeting, as they walked through a suspended garden overlooking the nighttime splendor of Helios City, Thalia stopped suddenly. "Your heart rate increases when we are alone," she observed. "Is it fear?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "No, your majesty, not fear." Understanding passed between them, acknowledgement of an attraction that defied all diplomatic protocol and perhaps biological sense. "Tomorrow's negotiations will be difficult," she warned, changing the subject. "The military council is resistant to sharing defensive technology." "I understand their concerns," Elias replied. "Trust must be earned." Thalia's luminescent patterns pulsed with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "Yes, trust." She stepped closer, her tall form nearly touching his. "Tell me, Ambassador, do you trust me?" The air between them seemed charged with electricity. "More than I should, perhaps." Her hand rose to his face again, this time tracing the line of his jaw with delicate precision. "Good, because there are things I must show you, things that will change everything you believe about our worlds." The negotiation chamber hummed with tension. Earth's delegation faced Veridia's council across a table of living crystal that shifted colors with the emotional temperature of the room, currently a stormy gray. "Absolutely not," General Vex of the Veridian Military Council slammed his hand down. "Sharing quantum shield technology would compromise our defenses. The human proposal is rejected." Elias maintained his composure despite the setback. "The treaty cannot move forward without mutual security guarantees. Earth's council will not accept one-sided vulnerability." First Minister Karan intervened. "Perhaps a limited technology transfer under strict oversight." "No," General Vex's skin flashed crimson, a warning sign Elias recognized from his briefings. "Humans have shown their aggression in 3 planetary conflicts. Their history suggests they would weaponize any defensive technology." Before Elias could respond, Queen Thalia entered the chamber, an unexpected appearance that brought all Veridians to their feet in respect. "This session has become unproductive," she announced. "We will reconvene tomorrow. Ambassador Frost, you will accompany me to review alternative security proposals." No one dared object to the Queen's command, though General Vex's skin pulsed with barely contained objection. As they walked through a private corridor, Thalia's formal demeanor softened. "Your frustration was visible to me, though well hidden from the others." "The general's position may derail years of preparation," Elias admitted. Instead of leading him to a conference room, Thalia guided him to a transport platform that beamed them to what appeared to be a private sanctuary high in the crystalline towers overlooking the city. "My personal residence," she explained, nodding his surprise. "We can speak freely here without the council's surveillance." The space was unexpectedly intimate. Flowing architecture bathed in soft bioluminescence, with viewing portals revealing Veridia's 3 moons rising on the horizon. "The negotiations are failing," Thalia stated bluntly, "because both sides hide their true intentions. Your Earth Council wants our technology to protect against other threats they haven't disclosed." Our military council fears human expansion once you possess our defensive capabilities. Ilias couldn't deny her assessment. Trust is difficult between species who barely understand each other. Yet here we are. She moved closer, her height towering over him, but somehow no longer intimidating. You and I have developed something rare between our kinds. Understanding, he suggested. More, her luminescence shifted to patterns he hadn't seen before, rippling gold and amber. I have studied your species extensively, Ilias, your biochemistry, your emotions, your desires. She reached for his hand, and this time when their skin touched, a more intense connection formed, a pleasant buzzing sensation that traveled up his arm. Ilias knew he should maintain professional distance, but found himself unwilling to break the contact. What is happening between us? He asked quietly. Something unprecedented, she replied, her voice soft. Veridians form biochemical bonds through proximity and touch. Usually it happens only between our own kind, but you— Her free hand traced the outline of his face. Your biochemistry is surprisingly compatible with mine. The implications were staggering. Is that why you've arranged these private meetings? Initially I was curious, she admitted. Then I became interested. Now I find myself— She searched for the word— attached. The honesty of her confession broke something in Ilias' careful diplomatic reserve. Without fully understanding the impulse, he reached up, tracing the luminescent patterns on her neck with gentle fingers. Thalia's reaction was immediate. Her skin brightened intensely where he touched, and a soft gasp escaped her lips. Your touch affects me strongly. Warning signals flashed in Ilias' mind, but were quickly overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. This goes against every protocol. Protocol, she echoed, leaning down until her face was inches from his. Cannot account for what we've discovered. Their first kiss was tentative, an exploration of alien textures and sensations. Her lips were cool at first but warmed quickly against his. Where they touched, her skin emitted pulses of light that seemed to synchronize with his heartbeat. The kiss deepened, and Ilias felt a strange euphoria spreading through him, not just emotional but physical, as if her bioluminescence was affecting his neurochemistry. His hands found the small of her back, pulling her closer despite their height difference. Thalia made a sound unlike anything he'd heard before, a harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate within his chest. Her long fingers tangled in his hair, and the room itself seemed to respond to their embrace, the crystal walls pulsing in rhythm with their accelerating heartbeats. Neither noticed the door sliding open, nor the shocked face of First Minister Karan witnessing their forbidden embrace before quickly retreating. When they finally separated, Ilias felt dizzy with sensation. Thalia's skin glowed with unprecedented brightness, her patterns shifting rapidly between colors he hadn't seen her display before. This changes everything, she whispered, resting her forehead against his in a gesture that felt both alien and deeply intimate. What happens now? He asked, knowing they had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Before she could answer, an urgent chime sounded. Thalia reluctantly checked a crystalline communication device. Her expression darkened. The Earth Council has sent an emergency transmission, she said. They're demanding your immediate return. Ilias stood in the encrypted communication chamber, facing the holographic projection of Earth's Security Council. Their expressions conveyed the gravity of the situation before anyone spoke. Ambassador Frost, Chancellor Rivera began without preamble, we've received disturbing intelligence from Veridian sources. You are ordered to terminate negotiations and return to Earth immediately. Ilias maintained his diplomatic composure. May I ask what intelligence has prompted this decision? We're making progress on key provisions. Don't insult our intelligence, Frost, General Harrington cut in. We've received visual confirmation of inappropriate contact between you and the Veridian Queen. You've compromised the entire mission. So Karan had reported what he'd seen. Ilias should have expected as much. The situation is more complex than it appears, Ilias began carefully. Your transport leaves in 6 hours, Chancellor Rivera interrupted. This is not a discussion. The mission is recalled. When the transmission ended, Ilias found himself alone with the weight of his choices. In less than a week, he had gone from respected diplomat to liability, yet he couldn't bring himself to regret what had happened with Thalia. A soft chime announced her arrival. She entered alone, her luminescence dimmed to solemn blues. "Your council has demanded your return," she stated, not a question. "You knew." "The military council has been monitoring all communications. They've wanted to end these negotiations from the beginning." She moved closer, her tall form somehow seeming vulnerable now. "What will you do?" "My duty would be to return," he said, the words hollow even to his own ears. "And what of this?" She gently touched his chest over his heart. "Is duty all that matters to humans?" He covered her hand with his own. "You know it isn't." They stood in silence, the impossible weight of their different worlds pressing in from all sides. "I have something to show you," Thalia said finally, "before you decide." She led him to a secure laboratory deep within the palace, accessible only through her royal biometric signature. Inside, Veridian scientists worked with technology far beyond anything Elias had seen in the official tour. "This is why the military council fears sharing with Earth," she explained, gesturing to a simulation showing planetary defense systems. "Not because they fear your aggression, but because they know what's coming." The simulation shifted to show a massive fleet of unknown vessels approaching from beyond the edge of charted space. "The Harbingers," Thalia explained, "a nomadic species that has destroyed 12 civilizations in the past century. Their course will bring them to your solar system first, then ours." Elias stared at the projection in horror. "Why hasn't Earth been warned?" "The Council believes humans would panic, or worse, attempt preemptive strikes that would accelerate the Harbinger's timeline." She deactivated the simulation. "I disagree. I believe our worlds must stand together." "This changes everything," Elias muttered, echoing her words from the night before. "Yes," she agreed, "but there is more." She hesitated, then continued softly. "What happened between us? The biochemical compatibility, the resonance, it's unprecedented. My scientists believe a formal bond between Veridian and human physiology could enhance our telepathic defense networks against Harbinger technology." Elias processed her words slowly. "You're suggesting our connection could have strategic value." "I'm suggesting it already does." Her luminescence brightened. "But that's not why I showed you this." She took his hands in hers. "I showed you because I want you to understand what awaits if you return to Earth without the full protection of Veridian technology." The weight of her words hung between them. "There's another option," she continued. "Stay, not as ambassador, but as my consort. Together we could forge an alliance stronger than any treaty. I could protect your world and mine." "That would be seen as desertion," Elias said quietly. "I'd never see Earth again." "Perhaps, or perhaps you would return as something more than human, with the authority to truly unite our species." Her grip tightened. "I'm not offering this lightly, Elias. A queen's consort is a position of both privilege and sacrifice." "What sacrifice would it require?" he asked, though he suspected he knew. "Partial genetic modification, integration with Veridian biochemistry. You would remain yourself, but enhanced, connected to our collective consciousness in ways no human has experienced." Her voice softened. "And bound to me in ways that cannot be broken." The transport awaited. Earth expected his return. Duty, career, and the life he had known stood on one side. On the other, an alien queen who had somehow touched his soul, offering both love and the salvation of his species. "I need time to think," he finally said. "You have until sunset," she replied, the sadness in her voice suggesting she already anticipated his answer. The 3 moons of Veridia created ghostly shadows across the royal gardens as Elias made his way toward the transport bay. His single bag contained the few Earth possessions he had brought: clothes, credentials, memories of a world he might never see again. Earth's retrieval vessel waited, engines humming. Captain Novik stood at the ramp, relief visible on her face. "Ambassador," she called, "we were beginning to worry you wouldn't make the departure window." Elias stopped several paces from the ramp. "Has Earth received my final transmission?" "Yes, sir. Chancellor Rivera acknowledged receipt but said your full debriefing would occur back home." She gestured toward the ship. "We need to depart now to make the jump window." "I'm not going, Captain." Novik froze. "Sir, I have direct orders." "To transport me if I choose to return," Elias completed. "I don't. Please inform Chancellor Rivera that I've accepted a permanent diplomatic position on Veridia." "They'll consider this desertion, sir." They're free to consider it whatever they wish. He set down his bag. The data packet I transmitted contains everything Earth needs to prepare for what's coming. Whether they choose to believe it is beyond my control. Novik's expression hardened. The Queen has influenced you somehow. Our intelligence suggests Veridians have mind-altering capabilities. Elias smiled sadly. If understanding someone's mind meant altering it, then perhaps. Give my regards to Earth, Captain. I hope we meet again under better circumstances. He turned and walked away as Novik called after him. The sound of the transport's ramp closing felt like a final door shutting on his former life. Queen Thalia waited in her private observatory, her luminescence subdued as if preparing for disappointment. Your ship has departed, she noted as he entered, without you. I've made my choice, he said simply. For the first time, he saw Thalia's composure break. Her luminescence flared with brilliant colors, joy, relief, and something deeper that needed no translation between species. She crossed the room in fluid strides, enveloping him in an embrace that lifted him off his feet. I feared you would choose duty, she whispered against his hair. I chose a different duty, he replied, to both our worlds. Later that night, after the formal announcement of Elias' new status as royal consort and interspecies ambassador, they stood on the balcony of Thalia's quarters, overlooking the city that would now be his home. The procedure begins tomorrow, she said softly, her fingers tracing the contours of his face as if memorizing him. My scientists assure me the integration will be gradual. Your consciousness will remain yours, but expanded. Will it hurt? He asked, not from fear but curiosity. Yes, she answered honestly. Birth always does. Their bodies pressed together under the alien sky, no longer foreign to each other despite their differences. Where their skin touched, harmonious patterns of light emerged, his body already beginning to respond to hers on a cellular level. I never expected this outcome when I arrived, Elias admitted, as her hands explored the unfamiliar terrain of human anatomy with increasing confidence. Nor did I, she replied, guiding his hands to regions where her luminescence responded most intensely to his touch. But perhaps the universe has wisdom beyond our planning. Their lovemaking was a careful exploration of alien physiology, discovering unexpected sensitivities, navigating biological differences with patience and wonder. When they finally joined completely, Thalia's bioluminescence enveloped them both in a cocoon of light that seemed to merge their separate energies into a single harmonious pattern. In that moment of connection, Elias caught glimpses of her mind, ancient memories, the weight of a crown, the loneliness of rule, and beneath it all genuine affection for the strange human who had broken through millennia of isolation. 3 months later, Elias stood before the newly arrived Earth delegation, transformed yet recognizable. His skin now held subtle luminescent patterns that pulsed with his emotions, and his height had increased by several inches. More profound were the internal changes, enhanced telepathic abilities, and a direct connection to Veridia's collective consciousness. Chancellor Rivera regarded him with poorly concealed shock. Ambassador Frost, or should I say Consort Frost? Either is acceptable, Elias replied calmly, aware of Thalia watching from her throne. I represent both worlds now. Your transformation was a condition of alliance, Rivera asked carefully. A choice, Elias corrected, one I would make again. The negotiations that followed proceeded with unprecedented speed. With Elias able to sense deception from both sides and Thalia's full support behind him, a true alliance formed, not the limited agreement originally envisioned, but a complete sharing of technology and resources to face the approaching threat. Late that night, after the Earth delegation had retired, Elias and Thalia stood in their private garden, his arm around her waist in a gesture that had once seemed impossible given their height difference. They fear you, she observed. They believe you become more Veridian than human. And what do you believe? He asked, his luminescence pulsing in rhythm with hers, a harmony visible to any Veridian eye. I believe you are something new, she replied, touching the place where his heart beat, stronger now, synchronized often with her own. Neither fully human nor Veridian, but a bridge between worlds. Does that disappoint you? In answer, she drew him into a kiss that still sent cascades of light rippling across both their skin. It gives me hope, she whispered against his lips. for both our worlds and whatever we might become together. In the royal chambers that night, as their bodies joined with practiced familiarity yet undiminished wonder, Elias felt the distant consciousness of Earth, still home, still beloved, but no longer his only world. The stars visible through the crystalline ceiling were no longer foreign, but a shared heritage between species who had found connection despite all odds. And as Thalia's luminescence enveloped him in waves of light and pleasure, Elias knew with absolute certainty that no human woman could have offered what he'd found here. Not just desire fulfilled, but transformation, purpose, and a love that transcended the very definition of humanity. He had arrived as a diplomat and remained as something more, a bridge between worlds, the consort of a queen, and the first of what both he and Thalia hoped would be many connections between their species. A new beginning not just for him, but for two civilizations about to face the darkness together. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.